Thanks for plugging in to Rethinking the Dollar. I'm excited to have my guest, Fabian Calvo from Fabian4Liberty sit down with us today to discuss his book, The Global Economic Reset. I'm sure you're going to find this to be very entertaining. Click the subscribe button below for more monetary updates as well as RTD interviews. Enjoy.
Welcome to Rethinking the Dollar. I'm excited to have my guest, Mr. Fabian Calvo. Mr. Calvo is a real estate investor, entrepreneur, as well as a monetary enthusiast and author. Today he's going to sit down with us to discuss his book, The Global Economic Reset, as well as his take on the global economy in general. Fabian runs several businesses and ventures spanning from real estate investment to various online companies. He's recognized around the world as Fabian4Liberty and host of the Fabian Calvo Podcast, as well as the Fabian4Liberty YouTube channel, which has approximately 45,000 subscribers and growing. So Fabian, welcome to Rethinking the Dollar.
Thanks for having me on, Michael. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you sitting down. I know you're a busy man. You have a lot of webinars and things going on, so I want to dive right into it. What comes to mind when you hear the words Rethinking the Dollar?
Well, immediately what comes to mind is that it's a great idea. You know, we still have in 2015, we still have so-called financial advisors that basically talk a game about diversification, but they take their clients' money and they diversify it into all dollar-denominated assets. And the truth is, the world is fundamentally changing, and we clearly see certainly countries in the East, but we're starting to see even countries in Europe that are beginning to rethink the dollar themselves and get away from the dollar. So I think that for people out there, investors, rethinking the dollar could be as simple as taking your dollars and buying gold or silver. So yeah, I think absolutely it's something that people need to keep at the top of their radar. I often talk about how the world's about to fundamentally change. I don't mean tomorrow or next week, but certainly we're in that process.
All right. Now, how important is it for citizens in general, just a commoner who has no economic or monetary background, to begin taking an interest in these matters? Things you talk about, things a lot of alternative media guys talk about when it comes to economics and as well as entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's really of the utmost importance, Michael. We live in a world today where there's really no excuses. I mean, you can learn whatever you want on YouTube, on the internet. You find good sources, and you could teach yourself relatively quickly. And I would suggest people really understand the way the dollar works. In fact, next week we're doing the whole entire presentation about the way our money system works. And in fact, I was talking about this with some friends of mine that really, they're smart people. They're not stupid. They're intelligent, very well-off people, have good careers, and they were blown away. Most people don't understand the way our monetary system works. It's certainly in dire straits and in uncharted financial territory. So I think it's really, really important. I mean, I don't think people should panic about this because I think we have some time here, but I think they should certainly, begin to educate themselves on our monetary system and on the U.S. dollar's role throughout the world.
Right. Now, I'm aware of your philosophy on the pretty much thinking beyond the traditional job paradigm model, the 9-to-5 model. And so that's why you encourage entrepreneurship and you have various seminars and things you put on for people that mind. Now, with entrepreneurship, how easy is it or how simple is it for someone to get involved and to get started?
Here again, it's interesting. When I often post videos about entrepreneurship, I get comments that range from not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur to basically it's impossible, things of that nature. The truth is, Michael, is that prior to really, let's say, the 1940s, Americans were pretty much entrepreneurs. I mean, it was the blacksmith, the farmer. We were an entrepreneurship-minded country. It's only when the big corporations started to, in essence, via educational systems and things of that nature, turn out this working mentality where you had to work 9 to 5 for corporate America. That's a relatively new concept in the United States, which is a young country. America was founded on entrepreneurship. Its roots are rooted in entrepreneurship, and so I think that we got to go back to that. And I understand there's a lot of people that are stuck in that job paradigm, and I by no means am telling people to go quit their jobs. But I think, again, we live in a world, I like to refer to it as the golden age of business. Look, you started up this great internet show. That wasn't available 10 years ago. And today, anyone can do that. Anyone can do that, and they can earn an income doing it. And it doesn't necessarily need to be an internet show, but it could be a variety of different things. And despite all of the economic insanity we see in the world, despite the fact of, I believe, hook, line, and sinker, that the global economic reset is coming sooner than later, I still believe we are, like I said, in the golden age of business, and opportunity abounds for those who seek it out.
All right, now to dive into the global economy picture a little bit, and as we get ready to dive into the Global Economic Reset book you wrote, if you were given a chance to give the global state of the economy address, what would it be if all TVs nationwide and globally was tuned into the Fabian Calvo show? How would you address the public? What would you say?
Well, I would tell them that we are seriously the average person out there, and I'm talking throughout the world, but let's just stick with the West, is in for some serious financial pain if they're not prepared for what's coming. And what's coming is basically a default on a major scale of $100 trillion plus credit bubble that has been forming for decades now. In fact, it's much larger than that. If we count in derivatives, we're talking in the quadrillions. But if I was just speaking to people in America alone, I mean, we're in a country that has over $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities, close to $18 trillion in debt and growing. It is an unsustainable economic model. Like I said earlier, it is uncharted financial territory. No other country in the history of the world has done what America has done to its currency, nor has it had a Federal Reserve banking system that is, in essence, making things up as they go along. It's been a complete departure, Michael, from any type of free market capitalism that really founded this country. Now we have simply crony capitalists, where big banks on Wall Street that own the private for-profit Federal Reserve basically get to operate with impunity and run the show. And it's destroying the middle class. It's destroying the working class, to basically the bedrock of America. And it's gonna get ugly. So that's why I tell people, listen, the only thing you can do about it is there's nothing I can do, Michael. There's just nothing I can do to change what's going to happen with the dollar, with the Federal Reserve. Right. But there's things that I can do myself personally to change, and that's what I tell people to do. Focus on what you can do for yourself and your family, and that's why I'm so big on entrepreneurship.
Right. Now, how did you arrive at this point now where your passion is to inform people and try to wake people up before this event happens? I mean, how did you get to this point, and what led to you, I guess, coming to your truth as far as the economy is concerned?
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. Definitely, I grew up in a household that was, my dad was an entrepreneur, so it's been around me since I was a kid. In 2007, I was a precinct captain for the Ron Paul campaign. And from that point on, I really just started to dive into every economic book I could get my hands on, really understanding the way the world really works. In 2010, I ran for public office in Florida for state representative. And, it was like a punch in the gut as far as really, it's one thing to hear about things, Michael, it's another thing to actually know that basically our political system is whoever has the most money wins. I mean, not always, but typically that's how it works. Right. And we have a two-party system that pretty much operates in the same playbook. I mean, there's really no difference other than the rhetoric. So for me, that really woke me up to that there isn't really a political solution. The solution lies within the individual. It's been, like I said, it's been a long road. I have a passion, obviously, for history, geopolitics, and economics. And I found that after the crash, especially, me continuing to sharpen my knowledge of financial markets, both prior and before the crash, makes me a better business owner, makes me a better entrepreneur, because, I think we need to know about these artificial boom and bust cycles that are created by the Federal Reserve.
Right. Now let's dive into the global economic reset. I mean, what made you decide to write that book, and why now? And, how was it doing all your research to gather all the information that's in there and present it in the format? And how has it been received as well?
Well, it's been received really well. I've been talking about the global economic reset for a few years. On my YouTube channel, under my playlist, I have a video that came out almost 2 years ago about the 7 steps to the global economic reset. And truth be told, I preface a lot of those videos with the disclaimer that I hope I'm wrong about what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, I haven't been wrong about it. I have 2 small children. I want them to grow up in a country with peace and prosperity, But yeah, it's just we look at things that really started to take off since the crash of 2008, where you had, again, Wall Street banks, in essence, looting the treasury, hundreds of billions of dollars. No one went to jail, trillions of dollars. No one went to jail. And then from there on, I think what you saw is the rest of the world was basically shocked. In a lot of these countries in Europe and in China that were sold these toxic mortgages, these toxic financial instruments that were stamped AAA by Warren Buffett's rating agency, were kind of in shock. And so since then, we started to see China beginning to depart away from the dollar with bilateral trade agreements. We begin to see this Eastern superbloc power forming between the Russians and the Chinese. We see the BRIC nations coming together. Now we have this Asian infrastructure bank. So really, the proverbial handwriting is on the wall. and it's not like you have to, read 1,000 pages of some, or go to an Ivy League school to figure this stuff out. I mean, just it's out there for anybody who wants to see it. And I think, as I always say, don't take my word for anything. Just do your own research, and you're going to come to that exact realization, I believe.
Yeah. Now, in chapter 2 and 3 of your book, you talk about the reign of the dollar as well as the Petro-Dollar. Give us an idea on how that is shaped out and what type of mess, is the whole Petro-Dollar as that unravels, because you got the trade, the different trades and currencies. How will all that play out? And give me some contents in those chapters there.
Yeah, so basically, the Petro-Dollar after we went off the gold standard, which really the United States going off the gold standard didn't just all of a sudden happen in 1971. We started to get away from the gold standard like in the late 1950s, early 1960s. It was officially depegged from gold by Richard Nixon in 1971. And it was replaced with this Petro-Dollar, where basically all oil sold on international markets by the largest oil exporter in the world, which was Saudi Arabia, would be traded in US dollars. We still have that system set up today. But we see a lot of fractures taking place between OPEC countries like Venezuela and a few others that are beginning to say, well, we'll sell our oil. Iran, another one that will sell our oil and things other than the dollar. And most importantly, I think that we also see that the Saudis basically said, okay, we'll trade our oil for US dollars, you protect us militarily. Well, that's not really going on that much anymore. Where you see the Saudi Arabia has had to, now today they're talking about, sending ground troops into Yemen, into Syria, ahead of Iran getting hundreds of billions of dollars in this nuclear agreement that's been reached. WikiLeaks came out with a report talking about how the Saudis were obsessed with this Iranian nuclear deal. And of course, it's their arch enemy. So I think that the Saudis are now going to be scrambling to position themselves economically in a way that potentially departs from the dollar, or at least opens up their oil markets to pretty much any currency that's somewhat of a sound currency, which again would put more pressure on the U.S. So that means that it's less demand for the U.S. dollar because international oil is not sold in dollars. And so here again, the Fed, or their smoke and mirrors and deceitful money fraud, really, will have to buy up more of these dollars. So see, the demand for the dollar is absolutely going down, and the need for the Fed to basically take up that demand is increasing, and that can only last for so long.
Right. Now in chapter 5, you talk about the world begins ditching the dollar. What would that look like back home as the currency swaps, increase and people start to do the deals amongst each other? When they all come back to roots, what would it look like here in the Western world?
Well, I'd say best case scenario looks like Europe, where basically gas is $8 a gallon, $9 a gallon. Everything from food to clothes to consumer electronics is way more expensive if you go to Europe. I think, but in worst case scenario is that there's a total loss of confidence in the U.S. dollar by Americans, which is basically my definition of hyperinflation, and we see prices potentially double and even triple in this country. And so I think that's worst case scenario if the world really depegs. I personally don't think it's going to be an overnight situation that leads to that. I think it's going to be a gradual decline, and I think we'll likely just have people, for example, that are on fixed incomes, or people that are poor or on fixed incomes, or even the working class, middle class, really struggling financially, and likely the end of the middle class, because either people are going to move up into that higher bracket, most unfortunately will move down into the poorer poverty bracket, because things will be just so expensive to pay for.
Hope you're enjoying this conversation with Fabian Calvo. Want to direct my Android lovers to the Google Play Store, where you get a chance to download the Rethinking the Dollar app to stay in tune with more monetary updates as well as interviews. Back to the show.
All right, now give us a couple scenarios of how this reset might transpire, and give us some things to be aware of, even more so.
Yeah, so I think we're in the stage currently, Michael, of really this last business cycle for the U.S. dollar. And what I mean by that is that I think that I know they're artificially inflating assets. I think we see the Dow Jones surpass 20,000. I think we'll keep seeing real estate prices go up over the next year because there's just nothing left to do. There's nothing left to do but keep interest rates at record lows, have government basically come out and start giving out FHA, giving out money to anybody, giving out loans to anybody who can fog up a mirror, or like the subprime on the car loans. Those have now reached over $1 trillion. So I think we continue to see a last-ditch effort by the Federal Reserve to create what Alan Greenspan referred to as the wealth effect, which is basically, let's boost asset prices as much as we can. People will feel that they're wealthy and they'll spend money. Well, that didn't work out so well in 2008. In fact, it failed miserably. But this time, it's not just the housing market we're talking about. This time, it's the housing market, the student debt bubble, the subprime car loans, the stock market bubble, the bond bubble, the dollar bubble. It's all of these bubbles that I believe will collapse simultaneously. Now, there's a lot of different events that could lead to this. It could be as easy as the Chinese finance minister coming out and basically questioning the integrity of the dollar. I've been told on some pretty good account that already you have the Chinese behind closed doors working with the United States on basically deleveraging their treasury holdings. That's over $1 trillion, about 1.2, 1.3 trillion, in exchange for sweetheart deals in the United States for land, for companies, even potentially gold as well. So there's a lot of different ways that this could go down. I know, for example, also the IMF, there's a lot of talk about this meeting the IMF is having on October 25th, where they may add the Chinese currency, the yuan, to the basket of currencies. People are claiming that that's the day there's going to be some kind of new world reserve currency. That's not going to happen. In fact, I'm going to do a whole video about it today. People got to be really careful. There's a lot of people that, with all due respect, have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to economics and just the global financial landscape. Mm-hmm. And you got to be really careful of who you listen to. I tend to not listen to the people that tell me, trust me, this is what's going to happen. That's why I always tell people, don't trust me, do your own research.
Yeah. Now, with the whole September Shemitah things unfold, have you looked into that? And what's your thoughts on that? How typically in September-ish things usually unfold then during that time frame?
Yeah, so, I definitely love the author. It's definitely a provocative book. I have a kind of like a spiritual mentor. He's he's an evangelical Christian in the South that we just met actually a few weeks ago when I was in Florida. And, he's close to 80. He was telling me that, since he could remember, he's heard almost on a yearly basis, but certainly every decade, books that would come out that would proclaim the end of the world is coming. In fact, one he tells me about all the time that I remember was 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Happen in 1988. So, look, nobody knows when this is going to go down. I'm a Christian. I definitely believe Jesus is going to come again. I don't know when that's going to happen, and I certainly am not going to make financial plans or business plans or plans with my family based on when I think Jesus is coming. I'm just not going to do that. Right.
Now, how, with all the, I guess the articles that have come out and all of the events that have tracked with the 2008, 2001, 87, 90, so all those events that happened around that time frame, do you think is just mere coincidence or it's proper timing?
Don't. I mean, certainly there's a lot, it's like I said, it's very interesting the way he lays it out. In fact, I was in New York not that long ago, and I went to a lot of these different sites that he's talking about, and it's certainly very, very interesting. But I mean, look, the thing is that I think he believes what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. We could also say, well, the 7-year business cycle the 7 years maybe has nothing to do with this so-called event called the Shemitah. Maybe it's more to do with just the more of a contrarian wave, which was a Russian economist who put it out that said, look, there's boom and bust cycles. It's called the business cycle in Austrian economics. And, typically they're anywhere between 5 and 10 years. So it could be a coincidence that they've happened within that 7-year mark over the last, over the last several decades.
Yeah. Now, how, with all the unraveling that's going to take place and taking place now with the markets and everything transition out east, productivity wise, how do you see this after this reset or collapse or whatever? A lot of people give it different names, but what will the new monetary system look like, for the commoner here as well as those globally on a trade basis, you think?
Yeah, well, I think we'll still use the dollar here at home. And I think it'll just basically be a new kind of basket of currencies where it's not just the dollar. I mean, we have a basket of currencies right now with the IMF, the British pound, the yen. Adding the Chinese yuan is just a step in that direction. But the concerning part is the yen or the British pound sterling. Those countries aren't publicly advertising on huge billboards at some of the largest airports throughout Asia that we're going to be the next world reserve currency. The Chinese are doing that. The Chinese are buying gold hand over fist. In fact, there's rumors that by the end of the year they may come out and make a gold announcement that they've beat Germany for the second spot. If we believe the gold holdings that the United States has put out, it's never been audited. They've never come out. The Chinese claim they're closing in on close to 4,000 tons of gold. So all of those things, obviously to me lead that they are that they want to challenge the U.S. dollar. It's a country that's been around forever. And I think that they want to really be the superpower of the world. And that's why you see them making these alliances with all these countries. Most recently, this Shanghai Organization Council or Corporation, Shanghai Organization Corporation, where it's, now they just brought in India and Pakistan, and they're going to bring in Iran, and they have the Russians. I mean, that's 50% of the world's population, 40% of the global economy. It's pretty big.
Right now, as all these organizations begin to really take root and begin full operations like the BRICS and the AIB and all the exchanges and things like that, how do you see the United States responding to all that? Will they just participate, or will they look to try to thwart their plans, or what do you foresee?
Yeah, well, I mean, people got to understand that even with all the economic problems the United States still have, it still is a very powerful country economically. We saw what they did with the Russian currency, where they basically caused some pretty big inflation via the sanctions. We saw what they did with the Iranian currency, where they crippled it with sanctions as well. So they still have, the Federal Reserve is still a very powerful organization. So I don't think any other country necessarily beats the United States. I think it's more the United States and the Federal Reserve that's going to beat itself. And then you're going to have people that are waiting for that to happen to come in and take advantage of it.
Right. Now, as we draw towards the end of this conclusion, let's get into some solutions, some practical solutions. So as soon as people watch this video who may have never heard of your work or just happen to stumble across this video, let's give 1 or 2 or 3 practical things that they can do. As soon as they hit as soon as this video ends, they can just leave the computer, go outside or go somewhere and begin taking action.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, what I talk about things that are passionate to me. I've been a real estate investor for 15 years. I think pre-economic burst, economic collapse, and then post-economic collapse, it's going to be one of the greatest buying opportunities of a lifetime. I think if that's something that interests people, they should get educated about it. I think that, like I said earlier, we're in the golden age of business. That starting an online business is an incredible opportunity. It's no longer just a U.S. market; it's a global market. Regardless of what happens, and I use this example all the time, Michael, with respect to Greece. Greece is basically in an economic full-blown meltdown. Yet there's companies, one of them being this company called CocoMat, that is prospering huge, and they're selling to the global economy. So, I think a lot of it has to do with what we were talking pre-interview, which is, you change your story, you change your life. And, it's basically what kind of life do you want to lead? What story are you telling yourself? And lastly, I had a friend tell me this about 10 years ago before I had kids. He said that, if he had children, he would encourage them to be plumbers or electricians. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? Trade jobs, I think, are going to be huge. Everything from, fixing refrigerators to, being an electrician. Those are jobs that are not being replaced. People are not getting trade jobs. Or farming. That's something that, the average farmer is 65 years old. And I think it's like less than 1% of college graduates are learning about farming. So I think we have to think outside the box. And I think the future is for people who basically create value. If you are, and there's nothing wrong, I freaking have slanged pizza. I've worked at the freaking, hot dog stands. I've done all that stuff when I was a kid. But I'm grateful that now I'm in a position where I try to add value into people's lives. And I think that people that are the makers will be the ones that will do pretty well, regardless of what happens with the economy.
Fabian Calvo, thank you for sitting down with us and sharing with us your book as well as your work and as well as your take on the globe. Give everybody a chance to, I guess, to be a blessing to your work. Where can they find you at? How can they follow what you got going on and things like that?
Yeah, they can go to Fabiancalvo.me. Fabiancalvo.me basically lists all my different websites that are on there, or for my economic and geopolitic entrepreneurship commentary, Fabian4Liberty.com is the place to go.
Sounds good, Fabian. I will continue to follow your work. You do a great job of educating. I thank you for all the encouraging information you put out there.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Michael.
Have a good one.
Great work, man.
I will. Thanks.
Well, this concludes my discussion with Fabian. Hope you found this interview to be very informative as well as educational. I want to encourage you to get a copy of his book, The Global Economic Reset. Scroll down below this video here. Visit the RTD bookstore where you can get direct access to his book there. And also, leave us a comment. We would love to hear your thoughts on this interview. And if you found it to be informative, feel free to share it. Visit RethinkingTheDollar.com where you get a chance to test your money IQ, as well as to get a copy of my free ebook, The Simplicity of Money. Also, visit me on Facebook where I share monetary news daily. Looking forward to sharing more great interviews with you. Later.